What is Agile? Is Agile just another buzzword used by people who don't really know? Or is it a way to maximize resources, save time, and greatly increase productivity? We at Agile Coach Service can help for any part of your Agile journey.
The Scrum Cycle, Scrum Ceremonies. The Scrum Cycle is what helps give Agile and Scrum projects their structure. If you look at the Scrum Cycle here, we want to talk first about sprints, and we want to point out that sprint duration is subjective. Even though we recommend that you start with 2-week sprints to kind of get into the habit and get familiar with these ceremonies, we recommend you start with 2-week sprints and then evaluate and determine what is best for your business. So looking at the overall Scrum process, you're going to start with the sprint plan, and that obviously sets up the plan for this sprint and ideally subsequent sprints to get an idea what you're going to do then, at least at a high level. Then you're going to do the daily scrum. That's that key 15-minute daily stand-up meeting that gives everybody the updates, what each person worked on the day before, what they're working on today, and if they have any blockers or impediments. Next, you're going to move, once the sprint is completed, to the sprint review and ideally a demo to kind of get the business in line and show them your progress, and then wrap it up with the sprint retrospective, which is a lessons learned opportunity to course correct before you resume the cycle and do the plan for the next sprint. We believe that there exists a misunderstanding that there is no planning in Agile projects, but there completely is, and that's what you use the sprint planning meeting for. You want to get the detailed plan for this next sprint and also having a high-level plan for the subsequent sprint so you can have an idea what you're headed towards. Let's look at the Scrum cycle in action, because the first thing you want to do is use sprint planning to build out the overarching project or product backlog. Then, because what we do here is we take the tasks in the project or product backlog and identify the specifics of what we're going to work on in this sprint. Simple as that, with the goal of being code that we can demo to the business. Then we repeat. This meeting involves the entire team. The Scrum Master leads, the product owner defines the functionality they would like to see, and the team identifies what they can deliver during the 2-week period. The end is going to be your sprint backlog and what you've agreed upon to deliver. Ideally in the format of a demo for the business. We realize sometimes not all code is visual or create a good demo. But again, this is where the product owner and the business needs need to be represented, and this meeting is the opportunity to reset priorities and define what should be done, which may not have been the original sequence, and that's the benefit of Agile. And now let's look at JIRA, which is the tool we prefer for Agile projects. Let's look at the roadmap to determine which stories we're going to include in this sprint. So what we see here, we see that we're focusing on the user login screen functionality. The product owner has identified that as the priority for this sprint. So what we're going to try to do now is get the stories, the tasks for that overall goal, and put them into the sprint. So we're going to look at these, and they've already been identified with story points. So we're going to move the ones we know we need. The database, we've got this one. I know it's an annoying pop-up, right? You have to create the table. You're going to do the error handling code. We're going to add the task for the store procedure to handle the logic. Now on the front end, we're going to look at the actual login screen. We need that. Then we're going to add the middle tier code to process it. And then note the fact that we've already hit the maximum velocity for this sprint, which is identified as 22, but the team has agreed to go above that to include the testing tasks. The objective there is to complete all this so that it can be demoed for the sprint review. So as you see, we have the identified stories all in the to-do status. We're going to go ahead and start with the basic table one for the database team and the front-end screen for the GUI team. And we'll go ahead and start our sprint. So this is what we have. So again, you see the goal here for the sprint planning is not only just to identify the stories, but to have a demo in mind when you do that. And that helps the team kind of identify which should be prioritized and think in those terms. So with this good plan, then it's time for the sprint demo at the end of the sprint. And what we have identified as part of sprint planning is we want to demo the user login. with not dummy data, which could have been an option if you didn't have enough time, but with real data. And this is exactly what is demoed to the business. And in this scenario, they absolutely love it. So we note here the importance in having a multiple sprint level view. Example I just gave, if you couldn't complete that with real data, do dummy data, you can demo that. And then to only plan a demo when it's appropriate, when it's visual, something that's going to really sell to the business. That's the key to understand. Another important thing to consider is when you do your sprint planning, don't just focus on the next sprint. Have maybe a 2 to 3 sprint vision to where you're looking at features, epics, kind of a long-term view. Then of course you're going to focus more of your time on the short-term sprint, but use the sprint planning meeting to have an overall view of what you're going to do for the next several sprints and few months of time. There exists an advantage in the Agile and Scrum process compared to traditional waterfall project management in that it provides a daily quick check-in as opposed to the once per week typical project status meetings. We really like the Daily Scrum because we feel this is an opportunity to collaborate, work together, and then identify problems earlier rather than later. And also identify things such as bandwidth differences, where one team member can help out the other, and which you would not probably find if you were only meeting once a week. So we like this because it builds teamwork and it gets to the root of the problem a lot quicker than, like we said, the weekly project meetings. Sometimes we tend to get lost in jargon and terminology, and the daily scrum comes across as being something more complex when all it really is a daily check in. Now, there are three things we want to discuss, but effectively that's what it is. Where are we today? What are our plans for tomorrow? And then do we have any problems, what we call blockers or impediments, such that the team can either assist, maybe the scrum master can help work through them, etc. But effectively, it's just a daily status update and a conversation. So let's not overcomplicate it and expect too much more than that. Basics of the daily Scrum meeting are as follows. Keep it the same time every day. That way everybody's expecting it. They know they need to be there. Make it required. Not optional. Keep it time boxed. We recommend 15 minutes, but feel free to fluctuate that based on your team size. So the meeting should start off with a brief introduction by the Scrum Master. Keep it light, engage the team, try to get everybody in the mood for a conversation. And then what you're going to want to do is go around the room and get updates from everybody. Everybody should talk, whether in person or virtually. Make sure we have enough time to do that. And you're going to answer the key three. These are the key three questions that everyone should answer, and they're very simple. And we're going to see them here. The three daily Scrum questions are as follows. What did you do yesterday or the last work day? What do you plan to work on today? And then are there any impediments, what we call blockers, anything we can help with? And that's where the Scrum Master and Product Owner can add value. Now let's get an update from Gina and Lynn, two key members of our development team working together on one major effort. So in the daily stand-up, their input would be as follows. For completed yesterday, worked on the Python validation code. Plans for today, expect to complete the validation code. And then blockers, need app dev team to provide access to Git. Now this is key because this is another team we need help from. This is where the Scrum Master should provide assistance. So for us, one of the things we really like to do on our daily scrums, the daily stand-ups, is to review the JIRA board. So we'll give everybody the opportunity to talk, and then we also want to look at the board and see, can we make any updates? Are things proceeding as planned? And envision, on this board is pretty simple. We've got 5 stories that are active, the one base user story that we're targeting for the demo, and then the tasks that correspond to that. So we're looking at this one here, the development task to create the validation prompt. We're going to make sure, confirm with the product owner that this can be moved to done based on the acceptance criteria. And once it is done, we will move it across and set that as complete. Again, you want your product owner typically to approve that before you move it across. And then when we continue our conversation with the database team, we look at the in progress item as far as creating the users table. That is not yet complete, still in progress, and we expect that to finish towards the end of the sprint. And then the follow-up item for the development team, developing the logic to evaluate credentials on login, still active. So another question that comes up, how do you handle offshore teams that are from different time zones? Well, we have that scenario with the database team here. Many of the team members are offshore in our India office, so what we do is have one representative provide those updates for the team. So updates for the database team. Yesterday, built the users table. Today, plan to work on the store procedure, the development there, and then as far as blockers or impediments, none to report. So that is the update for the database team, like I said, provided by one member onshore.
So with the daily Scrum meeting, obviously you repeat this every day until the end of the sprint, and that sets us up for our sprint review and retrospective. And this again is our multi-sprint view, the key thing to bridge from one sprint to the next, and that's the importance of the sprint review and retrospective, to learn from what you've done, celebrate your successes, and move on and improve.
The sprint review meeting is an excellent opportunity to show management what has been accomplished in a sprint. We also discuss progress amongst the team and set velocity, but what's key with an agile team is to make sure that management is bought in and show off what we've done and then build that confidence for long term. Gone are the days, we hope, of management discontent, frustration due to lack of progress. We counter this with the Agile Sprint Review and demo by showing what we've done, keeping management engaged, and providing proof that we can be successful. If you've watched our section on sprint planning, you see how closely sprint planning and the sprint review meeting are related. Really, with sprint planning, what you're going to do is build out what you hope to demo in the sprint review and demo meeting. Sometimes there is no demo, but that it's very paramount that in the sprint planning meeting, you guide the sprint such that the goal in mind is a valid demo for the business. If that's not the case, you defer till the next sprint. Our goals for the sprint review meeting. First of all, for the team, let's talk about the stories that were completed for the sprint and establish our velocity. Secondly, for the stakeholders, we want to demo what was completed in the sprint, as we've talked about getting buy-in. First part is just going to be the team, 30 minutes to an hour, talk about stories that were completed. So the basics of this meeting are as follows. The Scrum Master will lead the meeting, and we want to update the JIRA board. In this example, these stories would have been moved along during the daily stand-ups, but we're going to go ahead and move them to symbolize what we would have done over the course of the sprint. So we're moving these stories from to-do to in progress, setting them accordingly. And again, in this process, once they're in process, you would hope the product owner would determine if the stories are done. See our Agile Basics breakout on Agile terminology for a definition of done and acceptance criteria. We won't get into that here. Suffice to say, in this example, the product owner has approved them. They've been moved for completion, and they're set to complete. So as we continue to move these stories along, we see that we've got them all complete. The final one taking a little bit longer symbolically because there's more to test with the functional unit testing team. So we get these moved over, and then we note the fact that although our team velocity was 22, we've gone ahead and completed 25 story points worth of stories. That was by design, just to have enough to include in this demo. So we're not going to change the team velocity, going to leave it as is, as 22. Next up, it's time for the demo. So you get the stakeholders together and get ready to present. Hopefully you've rehearsed this. So for this case, the sprint demo goals include the user should log into the main screen, and we want to use production data here. So for this example, we're going to take a director's credentials, log in, and then try a wrong password and see if we get a negative result. So in this case, we've logged in with the correct credentials. We're going to see if it does in fact connect, putting in the correct password here. And fingers crossed it works, or else we're going to be embarrassed. It does work. Account verified. So then we're going to negative test with the wrong password. Hopefully we'll get something else. And again, password incorrect, error. It does work on both positive and negative tests. So your takeaway here should be that a successful sprint demo can really help your project and your relationship with the business. But whereas a successful sprint demo can be a boon to your project, a poorly planned, unsuccessful demo can create a bad impression with the business. So we recommend to spend at least 1 to 2 dry runs of the demo before you present to the stakeholders. Next, let's talk about what you should include in a demo and what you should not. For one thing, it needs to be visual. We want to include functioning code, something that the stakeholder can look at and say, wow, that's impressive. Visual functionality, not database or code blocks. Nobody wants to see that. They can't relate to it unless they're technical. And secondly, you need to have a polished presenter, where sometimes the developers can relay what they've done, have the product owner, preferably the product owner or the Scrum Master present, and then be able to field questions from the stakeholders if need be. But it needs to be polished and rehearsed. And that's all for our discussion of the Scrum ceremonies. And we do realize we did not touch on the sprint retrospective in this particular video. We do have a separate breakout video. Click the link here to access that one and join us for that. But otherwise, thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching our video. Please subscribe to our channel and join us next time.